Hi everybody, I'm Kai from Elixir Mods. Today I'm just going to show you how to install and set up Unity for modding in Eco. Now this only matters if you are planning on making models and using those models in-game. I'm going to show you every aspect from installing Unity to installing the mod kit that is required to writing your CS files. So we're just going to get started with the Unity version that we're going to need. So the links for all the downloads will be in the description below, as well as a demo item for you to fiddle around with if you're just trying to familiarize yourself. So the version of Unity we're going to need is 2019.1.8, which can be found here. If you're using Unity Hub to manage your Unity versions, you can download it straight to the Unity Hub, or you can just download the straight install. Now the Unity versions may update in the future. You just keep an eye out on the Eco mod kit wiki, and that'll actually tell you the new versions to use and stuff. So the next one we're going to need is we are going to need the Eco mod kit. On the mod kit installation page here, it actually tells you which Unity version you'll need. So you just click on this link here and it'll tell you which one you'll need. So as it states here, 2019.1.8. So that's the version we're going to need. And then next you can it tells you where you can download it from. Next thing we're going to need is the Eco ModKit Unity package. Now I have already got this downloaded, but you can download that straight from clicking on this link, or you can download it directly from the GitHub page by clicking on eco-modkit.unity package and clicking download, and that'll download straight into your computer. So once your Unity version is installed, as you can see I have 2019.1.8 installed right here. We're going to create a new project on that Unity version. So we're going to need a 3D project, because we're using 3D models. Just give that a name, Demo Unity Project, and you can just set that to wherever you want it to go. Let's go desktop, we'll go mods. Oh no, sorry, demo. Unity demo, select folder, create. So now this will take a little bit of time to get everything set up. It just has to load and import all the assets required and stuff you need to get run. The first time setup of a project usually takes a while, but once you start adding more and more content to your Unity project, it will take longer to initialize. So we'll just wait for this to finish. And here's our project. Alright, so the first things we're going to do is we're going to remove the directional light and the main camera from the scene by selecting them. You can hold Control to select both of them, and just press delete. The reason we don't want these is because Eco already has an in-game camera, that's your player camera, and it also has a light already, which is your sun. If you're planning on making a light model or something that produces light as well, then you still won't need these items. That's done in a completely different way, and I will do a different tutorial for that. So the next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to go to Assets, Import New Package, Custom Package. And so you just want to navigate to your Eco ModKit Unity package, wherever you downloaded it to. Select that one and click Open. So this is all of the content that you're going to need for making all your models and stuff work and appear in-game inside of Eco. So we're just going to import all of that. And there we go. All of our assets and everything that we need for making a mod for Eco is already installed. So at the top here now you'll see a new window called ModKit, and this is something that we're going to use to actually make all our models visible and stuff in-game after we've finished setting them up. Alright, so in the description below there will be a download for this model. Now I did not make this model. The link in the description will be for the person who made this model. We're just going to be using it for today. So we're just going to be using a door, because the doors are pretty easy, pretty simple. Now this isn't a full stu scale door. I haven't gone through and made any changes to this file, so it may be smaller than it should be. So we're going to create a folder. We're going to name this models. This is where we're going to put all our models. We're going to create another folder. We're going to call this textures. This is where we're going to pull out our textures, so everything's nice and neat and nice and tidy. So in this we're going to create a folder. You won't need to with this demo item, but just for the sake of adding more models and stuff, I'm just going to call this model demo item. And then we're just going to grab our FBX model and drag that straight in. And as you can see, there's our model right there. So we'll go back out to our assets folder and into our textures folder, create a new folder, and call this demo item textures. And then the same thing again, we'll go back into our model folder, we'll get all these textures, and we'll just put them straight in here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to save our scene, and we're going to give it a name. So you can use F2 to rename. I'm going to call this demo item scene. So that'll ask you to reload the scene after you've renamed it, and that's fine. So next we're going to grab our model, and we're going to drag it straight into the hierarchy. So as you can see, our model has no textures or anything on it. It's pretty plain. Right, we're going to go ahead, we're going to unpack our prefab. This allows us to make any changes and edits to our model as we see fit. So our model consists of 3 different parts. So we have our frame, we have our door, and our door handle. Now we're going to a textures file, and we're going to start with dropping our textures straight onto it. And this starts to give the door a bit of a look. You can mix and match these don't have to be in this particular order. It is completely up to you. So once you've done that, you'll notice in here as materials, it started adding these into these little materials here. This allows you to add materials onto your models properly, because when you just drag and drop the file on it, it wraps the entire thing. And sometimes that's perfectly fine if you've done all of your imaging and stuff on your UV map, but this one hasn't. So we're just going to go through and we're going to assign our materials. So there we go, there's our door. Now once again, I had explained this in my previous version. Up here we need to set our shader type to curved standard. So when we set this to curved standard, this will allow our model to curve in-game with the eco world. So when you get further away, it's not going to float up in the air on you. Now you may notice that sometimes when you do this, it may make your model invisible. Feel free to set these back to standard so you can look at your model while you're doing editing. It does help, but don't forget to change it back. Now in this video we're also going to cover adding categories into our Unity scene so we don't have this really big list of all your different models and items. So to do that, you just you right click in your hierarchy and click create empty. So it's already given itself a name of game object, but we're going to rename that. We're just going to call this objects. Now you'll notice over here the position is all messed up. It's not 0. We need all of these to be 0. That's our center point, and that's where everything is going to be. Now to this is going to be our category, so we're going to add a component to this, because this is for all our objects. We're going to add the world object component. Now you'll notice in the world object script, it has a couple of variables here. We don't really need to worry about these. at the moment, but on some objects you don't want it to be interactable. It might be just a solid object or solid block. You can just turn the interactable tick off, and then this way players won't actually be able to interact with your object if you don't want them to be able to interact with it. Because it's a door, we want them to be able to interact with it. So next thing we can do is we can grab our door and drag it straight onto our objects. So this creates like a folder inside, and this allows us to store all of our models and stuff in here nice and neatly. You can make as many categories in here as you want, so long as you add the corresponding scripts to actually allow it to pass through. So now we have our door in here, we need to add a component, our world object component. Now we need to do this on this as well, so it registers that this item is actually a world object. Just having it in our category isn't going to be enough. So now we're going to add one to all three of these. We're going to add a new component called a mesh collider. Now we don't need to add the convex to each mesh, because the convex option just makes it so that the item cannot be passed through in any state. So if I hide that and select this again, the convex will add a full box. So if we were to add it to here, if we had a mesh collider here and put convex on it, it would make that entire object impassable even if the door was open. And that's not what we want. So the convex isn't needed. Even though, like, seeing as this one is in multiple parts, you can have the door frame impassable, but we're not going to use that right now. We're just going to leave that as that. Now we don't need to add the scripts to these other items inside of our door model, because that one script there will control all of these items inside of our model. Now we're going to have to rename this, and this is where this next part comes in. This is your CS file. This is everything, all your code and that for making the door work and appear in game as an item and register to eco. So we're just going to run over really quickly all the stuff in here. So we're going to use the namespace eco mods.techtree. This will add it to the mods and allow it to be registered in game. And then we have all these different usings. Now the reason we have all these usings is, I'm not going to get into it too much, but some particular parts of your file may need other items from other code sources that's in the game. So such as players or property. Property is a good one. So if we're using the property auth, if it needs, like, players need to use auth, you're going to need to be using eco.gameplay.property as a reference. Now, it's going to be hard to tell which ones you need without referencing directly from these DLLs, so it might be on the safer side to just include all of these usings to stay on the safer side. If you are having issues with your CS file not registering because it's missing using references, then you will need to find access to the DLLs. Now every part of this needs to be serialized except for our recipe, which we'll get to in a minute. So we're going to be using a property auth component, which means that people will have to be authed on the property to be able to use our object, and a solid ground component. This means that the door has to be placed on solid ground. It won't let you place it in the air or on the side of a wall. So we're going to call this our demo object. This is going to reference our model. This part right here is going to be referencing our model, what type of model it is. So it would be a world object. And then this is just for this line here, which we'll get to in a minute. So when giving your item a name in game, or something to call it from when you're using a give command, everything is done in a lock string. If you're very familiar with C# and stuff, you'll understand. But it's all done in a lock string instead of a string. So it'll be a lock string, display name, and a localizer to get the actual name. So when you're in game and you do /give, this will be the name here that you use to get the item. Now this just gives a represented item type. It returns the type of the demo item. The demo item is basically the details of this item, and it gives you all the details without having to write everything in over and over. We need to initialize that item for when it's placed down, and we need to be able to destroy it. So basically when you pick it up, it removes it. Next thing we're going into is we're going into the item itself. So this is the actual item registration of it. So this is like all your icons and all the details on the item for it to exist. And this is also required. So here we have a display name, which is the same. We're going to use the same name as we used up here, so it all matches. And then we're going to use a display description here instead of a represented item type. And the reason we're doing this is because we're giving it a description here, and then this represented item type up here will actually get the description from here. So we don't need to keep typing it out or copy and pasting it all the time. This will actually do it all for us. And then this is required for the item as well. I'm not going to get too much into the technical side of it because some people might not understand, but these are all required components, especially if you're going to be placing the item in the world. Now we come down to our recipes. So a recipe we can set to require a skill time, especially if you want to add the efficiencies and stuff like that. So for this, we're just going to go, we'll do hewing. Hewing skill level 0. So if you have the hewing skill at level 0, you'll be able to craft this item. So this will be a recipe, so this will register as a recipe. We're going to use the demo item here as well, the same as here, just so it knows what it's referencing to as well. It makes life easier. This also here, I missed this part just before, world object item will refer to the actual world object. So this actually links these two as well. So next we're going to be doing our demo item recipe. The reason these are public is so the game can access it. If it was private, the game wouldn't be able to access it. So this dot products equals new crafting element will give us our new crafting element. Don't get confused with these two. This will give us our return. So this is what it's going to give us once it's been crafted up. If you input the wrong value here, it'll give you something completely different. You can also make just brand new recipes for all items and games just by using this recipe. This little brackets here, you can determine how many you want it to give. So if you want it to give 2, it'll give 2. If you want it to give 1, just leave it empty and it'll automatically just give 1. Now this is the next part, as we're going into ingredients. So we're going to be going for a new crafting element, and we're going to say what we want to use. So we're going to be using a log item, and we're going to add a type of hewing skill, just remove these ones in the arrow brackets because it's not needed. So it's just there to tell you what kind of skill it is. So this will be a hewing skill as well. And this here will also be a hewing skill. We'll change this to hew and log item. The reason we add item here is too because everything in Eco will have an item reference. Some mods may not, but all the vanilla stuff will have an item reference. So when you're adding it in, you need to add that item at the end as well. You can't just add hew and log. If you want to add more than one item, you'll need a comma at the end, and then use a whole new line. Now, as you see here, this one here has none of the type of hewing skill or the multi-captive strategy or the lavish resource talent. This is basically if you just wanted to use that exact amount every time, regardless of the person's level. So here we can add stone item 1. So this will always use 1 piece of stone regardless of their efficiencies. Experience on craft will allow you to give experience for crafting all of these items. I believe its integer is 1 is 10, 2 is 20, and so on and so forth. Now we've got the next one, which is our craft recipe, like with our craft timing. The reason it's done like this is because it adds in the sorry, I'm mind blanking right now. It adds in the efficiency for the time for the recipe. So we're going to be adding the craft time value to the demo item recipe, which is this recipe. It's going to get the demo item. Now this needs to be like this as well. Now this here is our time frame. This is how long it takes, and this is set in minutes. So we're going to just set this to 5 minutes. Our type of skill is our hewing skill. We want to keep this the same as the required skill. Otherwise the person's going to need very many skills to be able to be efficient in actually doing anything in your mods. Queuing. And the next part is the initialization of the item name. So this here is what is actually going to appear in the crafting table of your choice. So this is the name it'll have when you actually go to craft it. And this is referencing the recipe so it knows what it is. Our crafting component, and we're adding a recipe to our workbench object. Now you're wondering why we're using object here. Not all items and stuff will actually use object at the end of their name. Some things just use their name, but the workbench is a workbench object reference. If you're having trouble with what you should be referencing to, you can just browse through the eco files to find out what kind of name it has that you're referencing to. Now the name that we're going to need from this file is our demo object name right here. So we're going to copy this, we're going to go into our Unity scene, and we're going to rename our door1 to demo object. The reason we've done it like this, and we do it like this, is because this object is now connected into our CES file via this one name. If you don't see your object inside of the eco, check the name and make sure the name is correct, and it's 100% the same as what's in your file. Now that we're done here, we can go ahead and we can hide our demo object, and we're going to also hide our objects category. The reasons we do this, and the reasons why we hide them, is if we don't hide them, then eco in-game will think that it's an incomplete item, it's being used by something else, and it won't utilize it. However, please do not hide any extra items inside your actual object. So with our door, because we have multiple different parts to our door, we don't want these hidden, otherwise when you place the object in game, it will disappear. Now some people may be wondering, what happens if I drag an object in there that doesn't have all those extra extensions? So we'll have a look at our model, and you can see inside here it's got multiple different things, multiple meshes. But what if it's just a solo mesh? When you just drag in a solo mesh, so we're just going to call this solo mesh, so that's your object that you've made, and you don't want to have to go through and you don't want to change all of these because it's all set to where it should be. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to create an empty. We're going to call it the object that we want, and we're just going to drag our base mesh into it. And then this way we only have to add our world object component to our empty component, set that to 0, and then all of your mesh positions will be saved. And then you can just add your mesh collider component there as well. We don't need these, so we can get rid of that. And the same again, you can just drag that and add that to your scene. So the next thing we're going to do is going to save our scene. So every time you do something, make sure to save your scene, because if Unity crashes, you're going to lose all of your details. Everything that you've done before your last save will be lost. So make sure to save your scene often. If you make a change that you don't like, you can just close out Unity and reopen it, and it'll be fine. So now that we've got everything set up and everything's ready to go, we're going to go up to our mod kit tab, and we're going to build our current bundle. So I'm just going to go back to our demos folder, and we're going to call this demo.unity3d. Once we've done that, it will build our Unity scene, it will compress it, and make it readable for Eco. And that's done. Our build is finished, and it didn't take very long at all. So let's go into our folder, and there it is. There's our Unity 3D file. So we'll save this, we'll close that out, and there's our demo files. So we'll copy these, add them to a zip folder, and there's our mod already ready to go. So I already have a server set up. It's a fresh server with no mods installed. We're just going to put our freshly created mod into our eco mods folder. And you can go ahead and create a folder, call it my mods, or whatever you want to call it. And just drag both your CS file and your Unity file into the mods folder. Once that's done, you can go ahead and you can start your eco server. So as you can see, this is an older one. This is 8.2.9. And this is the server I was using in my first video, so that's fine. But it's a fresh world. There's no mods in this at all. And as you can see, our server booted up without any issues towards the mod. So while that's doing that, I'm just going to quickly downgrade my eco version. To 8.2.9. So we can jump on and have a check. If you're using a dedicated hosting service, such as PingPerfect or another service like that, every time you add or change anything in your mod, it will require a restart of the server because they don't have the ability to refresh the mod data. And I'll show you how to do that as well. So our server is finished booting, and here is our server GUI. When we make any changes to our mod kit and then rebuild it, if you have access to this, you can just refresh your mod Unity data and it'll update it. And then you can just go inside, relog into your server, and it'll download all the new changes and stuff for you. So we'll go ahead and we'll launch Eco, and we'll see if our mod's working. I have the desktop audio turned off so it doesn't irritate people. So click on our world, and here we are. There's our brand new world that we created. I'm just going to save that really quickly. Skip all our tutorials. Alright, and here we are. Now we're going to give ourselves demo item, as that's what we called it. And there we are. We just received our demo item. And here is our door. It's very small, but there is our little door. And because we left the interactability on, we can actually interact with our door. We can set the author. We'll give ourselves a hammer so we can pick it up. And there is our demo item. If you can't see your model in game and it's just a white square, then chances are your namings aren't the same. So this name here could be different to what you had in your CS file. Now you would have noticed in game that our icon was just a grayed out cog. So we'll go ahead and we'll create a new empty, and we're going to call this items. We'll just set that to 0. It's not going to matter, as we don't need the transform. So we're going to add a component. We're going to add rect transform. Then we're going to add another component. We're going to add canvas. We're going to also add content size filter, size fitter, and a grid layout group. Now the spacing we're going to have on our grid layout group, so we're going to start with, is going to be 32 by 32. And the rest of these parameters you can leave. Next is our content size fitter. Is we're going to go preferred size. Rendering mode will be left alone. We don't need to do anything like that. And the rect position, we can just leave, like, we can just do 50, 50, 50. That doesn't really matter. We don't need that at all. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to create a new empty. We're going to rename this, and we're going to call this demo item. So this is referencing the item itself. And on our demo item, we're going to add our layout element. We're going to add a rect transform as well. Now this will overwrite. Actually, we don't need to. We already have the rect transform, so we don't need to worry about that. So now we're going to change the preferred width and the preferred height to 64. This will be 64 pixels. And we're going to create another empty inside of our demo item, and we're going to call this icon. Now inside our icon, we're going to add two more empties, and we're going to call one background. We're going to call this one foreground. We'll put that inside icon as well. So our icon just needs our rect transformation. We don't need to add any parameters or anything like that. We can remove the width and the height though. Next thing we're going to move on to is our background. Now on our background we're going to add a canvas renderer. And we're going to add an image. So we're going to keep these hidden, because otherwise we're going to see stuff like that. And then we're going to do the same thing on our foreground. So if you just add an image, it'll actually just change everything for you, so you don't have to go through that painful process. So we're just going to set that back to 0, width and height back to 0. Now once we've done that, we can go ahead, if you have any icons already made, I don't actually have any made for this at the moment. Let's just add one of our textures, right? We're just going to duplicate that. We're going to call this door icon. Now for our icons, we need to change them to a sprite, 2D and UI. So we'll go into our foreground, and we'll just drag this onto our source image. And there we go, there's our foreground right there. So go ahead and save our scene. Make sure our items and our demo item are both hidden, but make sure your icon is not. You need to keep our icon not hidden. We can actually keep that one unhidden. That's not going to matter. So we don't need these ones to show at all. We can keep that hidden at all times. So we'll go ahead and build our bundle. We'll overwrite our previous one. And in this case, we're going to do this directly into the server, if you are able to. If not, then that's fine. So we're going to overwrite that. That's going to build our new bundle. It's going to be adding our icon. And then we can go ahead and we can start our server back up. As I said, you don't need to restart the server every time you change the Unity files, unless you're on a dedicated hosting service. So just for the sake of that, we're just going to restart. So we'll go ahead and we'll relaunch Eco. So I stopped the video and I went back and I got an item that we could use for an icon. So we're just going to turn that to a sprite. Apply. And so we'll just add that onto there. You can also, on your background, you can add a color as well. You can add a color, you can add an image. Maybe a bit funny, but okay. So we'll see us save our scene, rebuild, wait for our Unity to finish building. Refresh our mod data, or restart your server. We'll pick up our door. For some reason, our door hasn't appeared. So here we go, a demo item for modding in Eco. Crafted a workbench, 10 human logs and 1 stone. We get 40 queuing experience from it. For some reason our icon's not appearing. So we just change our width, 760, 628. We'll adjust our position. Just going off of an older one I have that does actually work. For 1232 and 0. So we'll save that. Make sure that's left on left, we'll leave that alone. Our icon should be on stretch. Sorry, I seem to have missed that. Our foreground and our background should also be set to stretch. So if you have the same issue as what we just seen, then that's probably what you're missing. Let's try a rebuild. With the smaller stuff it'll build really quickly, but when you get into more and more stuff, it'll take a lot longer to build. Refresh our data. We'll relaunch Eco. Reloading. as you've seen really quickly, it re-downloaded all of our data. Even though we're on the same PC, it still has to download. And there you go, there's our icon. When you also type your item in chat, it'll also pop up coloured. When you hover over it, it'll give you all the details for it. See, and our recipe is at a workbench. We'll get a workbench, we'll place it down, and there it is, right there. There's our demo item. So we'll put one on order. It's supposed to take 5 minutes. And there we go. It is crafting our demo item. So that's how you get it to display in game, adding your icons, adding your categories, and keeping your Unity project clean. Next time we will look at referencing the Eco DLLs if you can get access to them. And any other questions that you may have in the chat, I'll try and answer them in the next video. And I'll also do another video on bundling, so making your CS files or all your code protected into a DLL file. So these files here will all be available except for the project, so the model, and all this stuff will be downloadable in the description below, just to see if you have the same things and what's the difference between yours and mine.